Today's guest is John Scott. Now, John is a good friend of the podcast. He has been on a couple times before. He has had a very extensive NDE, and it took us 2 podcasts to try to get all of it, and I'm not even sure we got it all. But today, I think I'm going to try to emphasize some of the after effects of his NDE. First, I want to say welcome, John.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me again. Pleasure.
Yes, John is pretty active on an NDE, if not many NDE Facebook groups. And if you're new to NDEs or new to my channel and you want to communicate with other people, I suggest that you check out some of the Facebook groups. Also, I want to quickly note that John is a terrific artist, and I think he does paintings of his NDE experiences, as well as he is an author of a book that we'll tell you about later, so you can check that out as well. And also, I have a new title for John. It's going to be a Rockstar NDE Experiencer. And the reason why I'm saying this, and what I want to know is, from his Facebook action, there's a lot of beautiful girls wanting to be his friend on Facebook. And I want to know what is going on with your NDE.
I have no idea. That was a curveball. You got me.
That was just a big joke.
Strike one. I just swung at the pitch. Woof, missed it. Straight through to the keeper.
That's called misdirection.
Misdirection.
Okay.
Ball one.
Ball one.
Ball one. Take a walk.
All right.
Ball 4. Take a walk. Okay.
All right. To be serious here, I want to know this. After speaking to a couple people who've had near-death experiences, they have told me that there are parts of their NDE that they do not share publicly anywhere, not on podcasts, and they may only share it from one NDE person to another. Like they'll ask, hey, did this happen to you? Yes, that happened to me, blah, blah, blah. So is there something like that happened to you?
Absolutely.
And that you have never shared and you're willing to share with us?
No, because I feel, yes, I can't speak for any other NDE, okay, at all, because mine happened 30 years ago, but it was like it's so present. It's something that is so deep that it seems to embed itself into your very psyche or your consciousness itself. And it's almost like, for me anyway, it was like going through a university degree and just getting slammed with the biggest exam. And there's no pass or fail. It's just that it's an experience. And it's like then, and the experience for me was so vast because mine took roughly about 2 days. I didn't even know what the term NDE meant till 20 years later. I wasn't even interested in this stuff. And it took me so long to sort this out. And as I said, the post reactions is I nearly went mad. It really pushed the fringes of my consciousness to levels that I had no idea. I mean, you don't have a counselor. I didn't know any counselors. And so one tends to refer to authorities, whether they be psychologists or religious people or whatever, and they all have these projections about what happened to me, and they all fell short, and they were all subjective projections onto my experience. And the experience is, like I said, I can't speak for anyone else, but the experience changes you, would change me forever. And it not only it changed my views of the external world, but it expanded them, but it also pushed me so far inward into my subconscious and beyond the subconscious mind. And that's really, for want of a better word, you've just entered a whole universe from this platform you're born with through your conditions and imprints. And then all of a sudden you're thrust into this vast area, territory that you have no reference point. And so, I read a lot of Joseph Campbell's stuff, The Hero's Journey, and his great works on mythology. And he talks about shamans, how they go into the underworld. And I thought, wow, this really resonates with what's happened to me. I don't call myself a shaman. I don't like the word. I think it's overused. I do know the origins of the word. it does go back to Egypt, and I can talk about the origins of the word shaman
Mhm.
later if you like, if you can bring that back up.
Let me jump in here real quick because for people who are new to the podcast and have never seen you before, there are two podcasts with John, as I previously said, but I just want to catch you up real quickly. John ate a poisonous mushroom while he was alone, kind of like on a camping, but in Australia they call it something else, a walkabout or out in the bush or something, and had his NDE there and basically went into the cosmos and saw all kinds of things. So I just kind of wanted added those in real quick for the new people.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's kind of like a refresher because,
Mhm.
and again, post NDE, let's scroll forward, and I never
Mhm.
read any others. I really
Mhm.
tried to keep away from it because I didn't want to contaminate my own experience, and I didn't pick stuff from any others. But after I wrote my book, and after I did jot stuff down for years, I started to get some semblance of what was going on and what happened to me. I feel really sorry for people who've been smashed in a car accident, their heart stops or their brain stops or whatever. I think I've been very fortunate because mine
Mhm.
was through an accidental poisoning, and yet obviously my body was primed enough to transmute those poisons, through a misidentification. And I'm not a drug addict. I don't go out having fun, chomping on mushrooms for fun. That's not my style. I mean, I was in the military, I was in the Navy, and I was playing first grade ice hockey. I was into sport and, just living my life basically. But due to my fitness level, obviously that had some factor in it. So bookending that with what I was mentioning about shamanism and the imbibing of these kinds of earth plants and transcendental. And a lot of people say, oh, they're drugs. I don't got a bit of instability in the connection. A lot of these sacraments in religion, hence like Aka, the wine and bread, for example, I think they're code words for, in some cases, these powerful hallucinogens that I think even the word hallucinogen is wrong because the term hallucinate means a distorted reality.
Mhm.
I prefer to call them amplifiers,
Mhm.
amplifying uh, spheres of consciousness, but you have to prime yourself and prepare. So I was inadvertently prepared physically for this through physical and biological processes of being fit. And, I was very fit. So synchronistically, the accident almost became a divine guidance without me knowing it, if that makes sense. I've pondered that aspect. Why me? Why did I have this experience? And I've had two NDEs and many OBEs. I don't talk about the first NDE because I only went through the tunnel. And this is a classic. A lot of people don't go through the tunnel, but I went through the same tunnel when I was 18 and I got different information. As soon as I entered the tunnel, I didn't even know where I was going. I thought I didn't have any concept of hallucinations or visions or anything. But then scroll forward 10 years and I had a full blown, what people call an NDE or a spiritually transformative experience. And so I could at least bookend the two experiences, but the second one was just phenomenal. And to go back to what you originally said about there's some intimate aspects of it that are not to be really spoken about or shared. Um, from my point of view, it's because there are people out there who would possibly take advantage of these stories, manufacture them to sway people in a certain direction. And I come from a pure intent of love because that's what I experienced on the other side, along with karma and all the cosmology and all the ontological information that I've sorted out through my 27 years as a recluse. And you don't lie about this stuff. I'm adamant about it. You don't play with it.
Mhm.
Don't go and write a book and try to make money out of it because you'll end up getting smashed. You can create negative karma by lying. Yeah, you might get away with it for a decade or two, but eventually you do get caught out. Eventually, all lies come to the surface.
Mhm.
And you don't want that to happen because that gets into other areas of karma. And that's where I get into the process or the cosmology of why we even have NDEs or Gnostic experiences in general, Jeff.
Mhm.
So, I've fattened out my intellectual knowledge. And yeah, it's available. Some people quip and they say this metaphysical information is available everywhere. But yeah, that's true. But gnostically experiencing it is completely different.
So, if I was a person who had had an NDE and we were together private, would you share that information with me privately because I also was an experiencer, or would you still keep it private to yourself?
It's hypothetical because have you had an NDE or a
No, and
spiritual transformation?
no, and I don't want you to feel like I'm not asking again for you to tell me. I'm just curious
No,
if you
sure,
would
sure.
just share it with another NDEer.
Um, that's a good question because when I wrote my book, and I had a lot of time to contextualize my experience, and I shared as much as I could, that I thought, and I got guided on things that I was not meant to show. I was given visions not to show certain things, right? Even now, 27 years later. And I thought, oh, I wonder why. I thought, I'm very innocent and naive. I think everybody's going to be a good person and nice like me, but they're not.
Mm.
My motive is not the same as yours. A great Sufi once said, just because I'm enlightened doesn't mean to say you are. And I thought, well, so I really listened to that and I just pulled back a bit. And yes, I discussed some aspects, and some people commented and said, John, you put together your NDE, and it reminded me and took me back to my own experience and contextualized areas that they'd forgotten about. And so by sharing it, it unveiled those hidden aspects that they experienced but then later forgot. And this seems to be a very common attribute of people who have powerful experiences. They come back, they remember a certain part, just like I did, and then I had this later unfolding of more and deeper information that because then when you're in an earthly body and our mind works in a strange platform like it's normally linear, most of we're driven by A follows B follows C follows D, but then with the NDE, the whole alphabet's shoved in one big hologram. You've got to make
Mm.
sense of this jumble because all the information hits you at once.
Mm.
And so I found the most difficult part was translating a holographic um, experience into something that resembled a timeline that made sense, and that was the most difficult part,
Mhm.
extremely difficult. Sometimes terms I use may be oversimplified. But I've gone off track on the question. I share as much as I can, and the most important thing is the love.
Mm.
The second most important thing is, well, the ND for me was so pure and so simple that our mind, the way it's structured, cannot understand simplicity. We can't understand it. It's too simple. It's too pure. And so we're constantly trying to work it out. And that's our intellectual mind overlaying constructs and questions and answers. No, there are no questions and answers when you have this experience because it's all simultaneously answered for you. Um, but then sharing that experience is almost impossible. And so when I verbalize my experience with another ND, and I've had a few people I've spoken about it with, um, they reached a certain level that may have been for them. And like they might have seen Jesus or Buddha or Krishna or whatever. And so that may have been their experience to give them information to help them on their particular incarnation. And everybody has a subjective delivery. And occasionally, possibly there's people who do have a deeper experience. But remember, there's a lot of ego and people want to compete. My experience is bigger than yours, kind of thing. So
Mm.
you've got to get beyond that. You have to get beyond that and say, well, what did I come back with that's valid? What really can help everybody or the bigger picture, like a spread marketing delivery?
Right.
Love. But
Right.
love is such an overused word and it's really underutilized in the way we effect our actions. People say love all the time, all the time. They say it all the time. I don't like using the word and I don't like saying I'll promise you something or because I'm thinking I can't deliver if I don't deliver through my actions, it's pointless talking about it. So your actions become more important. I think Native Americans, Indigenous Native Americans are very good. They'll watch you for 10 years. They're not interested in what white man says, Wasichu. So they watch you and see what you're doing. And this is part of the experience that I came back with, was seeing things clearly without labeling them. As soon as we label something, phenomena or a person or an event, where that label extends into a belief and a pattern, and then more often than not ends up as a judgment: good, bad, this, that, this is that. And you got to be very careful with that, you know, because this dualistic mind trap, it's a trap. Once you start saying this is this and this is that, you're trapped in duality, and duality is the problem. It's what we've fallen into. And I'm telling you, there's levels within levels of density of duality,
Mhm.
from the biological, emotional, mental, then spiritual plane. They all have dualistic concepts. And this is another subject in and of itself.
Since you are pretty active on the Facebook groups, and you may see people come into the groups that are new to having NDEs, maybe recently experienced them, or they're just really now wanting to find out more about them. For somebody that's new with an NDE, what kind of advice do you have for them?
None.
None?
None, because generally they'll ask pertinent questions uh, from the level that they've experienced. And often I tend to go for the deeper questions. I mean, those early questions, they get answered often by many people. And I find it extraordinary that if someone can have a powerful experience and then next week get on the forum and talk about it, that wasn't my case. I was so blown away by the profundity of it. I couldn't talk for 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
I did, like, my experience happened circa 1990. I didn't say anything until 2010, 2012. And even then it was like extracting water out of a rock. I just didn't really want to talk about it because I didn't realize that it was a phenomena happening right across the planet. It wasn't until I did a podcast with Caribbean Radio with Dr. Evie Richardson, and Joe Holmesy was the host, and we spoke, and he gave me the numbers, and I was shocked, and I didn't feel so isolated, because it is very isolating.
Mm.
And I had spoken about it often earlier on myself and tried to approach, as I said, experts, but we never had the internet back then. So people are going to ask their questions, and people often want questions or answers, sorry, that make it easy. They want easy answers. Oh, my mum and dad's going to be on the other side, and you're going to be okay, and your dog's up there, and you can go and play jazz or fishing or do anything. And it's like, well, I don't agree with that, because my experience didn't show me that. I mean, the whole concept of, say, for example, seeing anthropomorphic imagery. Anthropomorphic means seeing people with two arms, two legs, and recognizable. That's problematic for me, because the universe gets into pure light, which is non-anthropomorphic. When I got right to the light, there was no imagery.
Mm.
It contained everything and nothing simultaneously. I just couldn't see anything but light. And yet the emotional content was so amplified. It was like chucking an amplifier onto a million, you know, from a
Mm.
10 setting up to, it's like the information was phenomenal. And it wasn't thrusting it down my throat, it just was. And so there's an absorption process going on here during my experience. When I reached that absolute level, I tried to see past it, the light. I tried to see through it. And there was every conundrum that I can think of arose. And that's why it sent me almost bonkers, because it was nothing and everything. It was the oldest, wisest thing, being, whatever you want to call it, God, it, deity, force. It knew everything, but it was still an unborn baby. It still wanted to know and learn. And
Mm.
so some of the most interesting questions that I've answered, and I think we discussed this prior to this podcast, was what were the most powerful questions that I answered on the forum? Well, one of them was about what's our purpose?
Mhm.
And the question I gave, and it was quite a long answer, was basically the creator doesn't create anything. It just changes form from light into density. So everything pre-exists, everything always existed. Whether we want to define the cosmos as multiple big bangs, yes. I would say there are multiple manifestations and then implosions and then explosions through density. So it's always here. Now, this did my head in because we always think in terms of beginning and end. There's that linear process in consciousness. And it's like far out. This has always existed. There's no time, but it's always existed. Another conundrum, you see. So I really freaked out because I thought there's no escape. It just is. How did it begin? How did it even start? See, this is where the logical mind tries to work it out. And it sent me nuts, absolutely bonkers. Because I thought, I'd had a million lives. I just knew it. I'd been there millions of times before. And this challenges the ontological process of especially the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, saying we only have one life. And it's just not true. It's just not true.
You said it's just not true. So you can say with 100% certainty that.
Absolutely. Reincarnation was ripped out.
So you can say with 100% certainty that reincarnation is true.
For me, yes. For me, yes. So whether we want to define reincarnation as part of the resurrection doctrine, and you say, well, what's resurrecting? Your memory's resurrecting. Your knowing is resurrecting. Your subconscious is becoming conscious and coming from that deep, dark space into the foreground, and it becomes cognitive as opposed to non-cognitive. So everything is coming out, and the Bible does say that. It says all truths will come out. Everything that is hidden will be seen. It's talking about consciousness is manifesting and coming out and manifesting from a once unseen platform. Carl Jung talks about the subconscious. Yes, I agree. So the more love, and I mean, the creator can just focus on this planet, pump love into it and destroy it. It could literally blow the planet apart if it chose to. But it's not a hateful deity. So when it starts to amp the love up, what happens is the love starts pouring into the planet because it's made up of light and sound, like everything in the universe. And as it lifts the vibration, all the lower vibrations start to shatter and implode in on each other because it can't handle that frequency. It's like an engine, blowing up on the drag strip. If you haven't refined that engine to take in certain fuel, it won't reach the speeds that you recommended speeds that you've projected. It's the same thing. It's physics. It's a physics thing, And so what happens is the faster or the higher or subtler vibration, all of this starts to evolve and get subtler. The denser vibrations shatter and break. Classic parable, you can't put new wine into old wineskins, a biblical parable. They're talking about the body as a wineskin, the physical vessel. And when the new wine comes in, which is a metaphor for subtle energy from deity, and that's not, it's not just Christians. I mean, it's everybody, because that energy is going to start pouring, and it is starting to pour in. And the old physical body starts to break down. You get sick, illnesses manifest. Where you used to drink a lot before, you can't handle the alcohol because that's a denser vibration. You can't handle denser thoughts. You can't handle evil or darkness or negativity or violence. These are all very base attributes. And so we're moving toward a more subtle vibration, which has been predicted for thousands, tens of thousands of years, and now it's upon us. So I got off track from the actual question, as I do that often because my mind wanders.
That's okay. Let me switch gears on you here, since I wanted to talk about after effects, and I heard you mention just today that you are a recluse. Did you become reclusive due to your NDE? And if so, why, and what were you like before?
Good question. I was just your average ratbag kid. As I said, I played sport and I rode motorbikes, and I was an atheist. I did questionable things. I didn't harm anyone. I always had a good heart. I didn't purposely go out and harm anyone, but I just didn't really, my boundaries were a bit too loose.
Mm.
And I got into trouble and, so just an average kid. I was a surfer and just having an average life. But then when the experience hit me, it was so powerful. It actually, the effects were immediate. And I was babbling about the experience because it was so powerful, but I couldn't contextualize it, and everyone thought I'd gone mad. My friends sort of just drifted and let me go,
Mm.
and then I've retouched base with them 20 years later, and a couple of them said, "John, you haven't changed one bit. Your story hasn't changed one bit from what happened back then." And that's why we know that it's valid, because we've seen you change. You've disappeared, you've cleaned your act up, you don't do things that you would have done. No way, I wouldn't do that stuff anymore. I just don't have time for it. So to fatten that answer out, I got interested in quantum physics. Well, anything that presented itself. I was pulled like a bull with a ring in my nose, and I just started to study stuff that I thought was interesting. Physics, quantum, all of this stuff was coming in. I had no background in science. Trust me, I didn't. I hated school. I was just a clown, and I just bumbled along and didn't care less.
Mm.
And now I'm talking about particle acceleration physics and quantum and getting into biochemistry, anything that's interesting, Feynman's theory, Pauli spin, all of this stuff. These are Nobel Prize winners for physics. And I can understand them intuitively, and I understand where they're coming from, because everything in the physics world is also applied to us. And the biggest danger is we're applying it. We constantly project science as being out there to look under a microscope or through a Hubble telescope, or the observations through deconstruction or smashing particles together. Now, we do that here in our own consciousness. We need to reflect and say, well, hang on, consciousness is the primary driver of any inquiry, any philosophical inquiry. We posit a question: is the universe, has the universe, gravity waves, dark matter? So then we set up experiments, theoretical, from a theoretical premise, and then we start looking for observations. So we're creating our reality. And we've got to remember that even science is doing that. And true science is much like metaphysics and much like the internal search for your soul and who you are. It's the same thing. We're looking for the ineffable. We're looking for patterns that we've never seen before. But the problem is we don't know, we don't have the equipment to look for these patterns, because we don't know we can only theorize. Yes, we might find that answer, but when you're dealing with consciousness, the answer, or the answer is thrust on you before you even have the question. Especially with the NDE, the answer was thrust onto me before I even had the question. But maybe I was already asking the right questions prior. What's the meaning of life? Where are we going? What's happening to us? We all have these deep questions. What's our purpose?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And people go, oh, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. But let me go a little deeper here. So, how do you define reclusivity? Are you just like not interested in participating that much with society anymore, or?
Well, only because of the behavioral psychology behind it. And I've studied a bit of behavioral psychology post NDE. I went through all of Robert Anton Wilson's stuff, his 8-circuit theory, which I found very, very helpful. And he was the protege of Tim Leary, and Tim Leary was a countercultural revolutionist, and they demonized him and said he was a drug addict. But the guy was also a doctor of psychology. And these great people that came through, like Terence and Dennis McKenna, I've actually spoken with Dennis through email many years ago, but they all have the same inquiries that each generation has. So when I say reclusive, um, I go back to the 8 circuits of human consciousness, and the first 4 basically are paraphrased within Freudian psychology. The latter 4 were Jungian, and they were more into archetypes and transcendental. And most of humanity is only stuck in the first 4 circuits, which are mostly tribal, socio-semantic circuits, which bind tribes together through linguistic binders and all of this sort of thing.
Mm.
And I'd heard the repetition of the same thing over and over and over and over again. So I got bored. I thought, no, I've heard that for thousands of years. I'm not interested in that anymore. So that's a closed system.
Mm.
Ilya Prigogine, Nobel laureate for open and closed systems. So closed systems die. So this is why new things in any sphere of science or inquiry, whatever, new things, we must have new things coming into our consciousness. Otherwise, humanity will die. We will die because we're driven primarily by consciousness. That's the first driver. So I left those groups because I realized I was in the matrix. I was in the box. The box is driven by habit.
Mm.
Habit is death. It's moribund. It slowly decays. And so when I entered into this other world, these other upper circuits, I thought, wow. And oddly enough, they're not fully objective, no. They're still paraphrased within a subjective reality tunnel, as Robert Anton Wilson would call it, but it expanded my ability to express my reality tunnel in a new way. And that's the word chaos is a misnomer. The world, look at nature. You've got all of these billions of species all working symbiotically together. It's chaos, but it's also order when we look at the bigger picture. Humanity is meant to survive off individuality within the collective. And the destruction of the individual will destroy humanity itself. This is where this gets into political attributes of free speech, free expression. And when someone tells you to be expressed through a pattern or an habitual belief, that's very dangerous. It'll destroy it. The whole thing will implode and die. Because deep down in humanity, everyone wants to grow, everybody. But what's holding people back is fear. They're terrified of growth because it means death. You have to kill the ego. You have to let all of that old stuff go. So Anton Wilson and all of these countercultural revolutionaries back in the 60s, some of them still alive today, they try to create a narrative. Some of them are trying to create a narrative of how we should think. I don't think we should go down that path at all. I think it's very dangerous. And this is where I say that power structures today, those basic four circuits are dominating, and they're trying to, what I call the animal circuits are trying to dominate our extraterrestrial circuits, those latter four. And it's those latter four circuits that actually expand us into a cosmological platform. It's beautiful once you're there. It's absolutely amazing because it's an interface between extraterrestrials and the bigger stuff. You move from kindergarten into junior high, and then when you have this NDE, you go up right up into the Berkeley and professor level. And it's beautiful because it's like, wow, I was so ignorant before.
Mm.
And then you see the ignorance and the levels everyone else is where, because you're looking down on them and you say, no, you're in a tribalism, you're in a tribal group.
Yeah.
You have to think for yourself. Don't believe anything I say. Question everything I say. Absolutely. You've got a brain. We've all given our own individual brain, and it's the one we use the least because we acquiesce our power through social power structures. We give it away, always. Object refer. He must have more information than me because of he wears a uniform or he's got a haircut or he's a lawyer or a barrister. No, I've found those people are just as insecure and frozen in their beliefs as I was. I don't mean that in a derogatory way because I can see past the mask now.
Mm-hmm.
And they're losing their potential. And sadly, a lot of those people, they get old and they think, well, what did I do with my life? The pattern repeats, they reincarnate, they come back again because they didn't grow. So that takes me back to answering that big question, why are we here? And I answered a beautiful question on Facebook where somebody, I can't think of his name at the time, but he said this was a beautiful answer and it made sense. And what it was, every human being is sacred. Every animal is sacred. Everything that's living has a sanctity to it. There's a purpose, from the drunk on the street to the mentally ill person to the lawyer barrister to the doctor to the neurosurgeon to the particle physicist. They all have a role and we're all interconnected in a bigger picture that we can't always see. So when we go back, when we die, and in my case, I got a life review, but it was a multiple life review, not a singular life review. And some people have different reviews. What's happening is it's like you're a recorder and all of this stuff is discharged back into the light. I didn't want to come back because of the love,
Mhm.
but I've had time to think about it since I got back. And this discharge was part of God's growing. God needs to know, but it wants new things. And I knew this intuitively. It was like downloaded that each and every person goes back with something, no matter how small, as long as it's creative and new, the creator loves that. Whether it's purposeful
Mhm.
is another question, because
Mhm.
this judgment of right or wrong. But if you do something creative, and you do something totally new, and it wants to know, this gets into the
Hmm.
deeper philosophical understanding of God expanding into darkness. It's like there's this expansion, and then God's consciousness in the form of a quadrillion or trillions of little drones or sensors, us, it expands out into this darkness, looking for new things.
Mhm.
That's growth. And then as they die, it's this feedback loop, and it keeps these entities, or us, ETs, everything. We die, we take little bits of information back to deity, and that's how deity grows, and that forms a one big bang and one
Mhm.
big expansion and
Mhm.
contraction, and it could
Mhm.
times relative. So to us, it might be billions of years. In the higher dimensions, it might be fairly quick. I can't really get my head around that. That's the bit that I can't get my head around due to the time
Mhm. Well,
relativity.
it's interesting that you mentioned God. From what I understand, you're saying God likes people to be creative.
Yes,
So, since you are a painter, do you feel like you are being more creative with your painting for
yes,
God,
yes,
purposely for God?
yes, yes. Because it inspires other people.
Mm.
Ultimately, for me, it has to be about beauty, because I think art can be manipulated and has been manipulated into, movements or political agendas. I don't go down there, I'm not interested. So for me, my art has to touch people on an emotional, intuitive level to inspire them. I mean, I teach as well, and I give everything. I don't hold back,
Mhm.
because the more I give, the more open I become, and new things just happen to come in. So and I'm not trying to say paint like me. God, no, I want you to discover yourself and discover who you are,
Mhm.
because most people don't. They're terrified of finding out who they are, because it's a destructive process. Because you've got to let go of the old Jeff. You have to let go of the old John, till one day Jeff and John don't even exist. You're just this pure flow. You just, you know, um, this constant flow of energy and creativity. And if people want to make money out of that, fine. That's their bag. That's good. I mean, this
Mhm.
is the vehicle we live in. This is the
Mhm.
process of trade. Um, and I think where humanity is doing itself a disservice, I feel, in that we've got some incredibly intellectual people. Some are doing the wrong thing, in my opinion. A lot are doing the right thing, and they don't realize that they're killing themselves, the ones doing the wrong thing. And this is where karma comes into it. The creator is allowing them to get away with this. It has empowered them in a sense, on an absolute level. It's giving them the choice to harm others. Okay. And it's up to us to take self autonomy. And this is where choice comes into it, to choose not to harm others. And you get tested, whether it's through speech, actions, thoughts, whatever. But everyone gets tested, and you keep getting tested. It's not like there's this ultimate goal where you just pop, you're there.
Mhm.
It's a process, and
Mhm.
this process is ongoing. So I'm constantly trying to polish that process as I get older, so that when I go back for a life review, the positives can outweigh the negatives.
Yeah.
And that drives the incarnation process again.
Mhm.
I'm not frightened of coming back, doesn't bother me.
Mhm.
Yes, I'm suffering like everyone else. I've had some horrendous suffering, but I don't attach myself to the suffering, because that's ego, you know.
Mhm.
There's a
Well,
lot people have suffered a lot worse than I have. Whole nations.
sure. Yeah. Well, what are some of the other after effects that you've had from your NDE?
Definitely altruism. compassion, a lot
Mm,
more compassion for suffering.
mm,
I don't like seeing the underdog getting harmed by bullies.
mm.
And when I dig deeper into the bully mindset, you find that they were victims themselves,
Yeah.
and it tends to flow from top down in societal structures. So the ones at the very top who are bullying everyone into things that people don't want to do, they're victims. I see them as victims. They're trapped in their own victimhood, and they don't need to be, but they're too scared to let go of that victimhood. They're too scared to let go of that power
Mm,
because it empowers them through their suffering. And so it's
mm,
very Schadenfreude. They like to see other people suffering from a distance. I think Tool, there's a good line in the band Tool that says, "I like to see things from a good safe. I like to, see things from a good safe distance." So they're observing suffering and they love it because they're suffering inside. What we call enemies, and those of the state and intelligence agencies. They're incredible minds. These guys are smart, but deep down they're suffering and they're trapped in the matrix themselves.
mm.
And they need more help than, say, the people who, they need more help than the others. I know that sounds ironic, but I see it clearly, and that gives me pain. So coming back doesn't all. It's not always nice. You don't. It's not always rosy. The after effects are shocking because I think, oh my God, when I saw the history, I talk about this in my book, the history of mankind, going back millions of years, and a lot of this should have been averted. We should have been off planet and moving off world a million, 100,000, 200,000 years ago on our cosmic journey. So this gets into other areas of why we keep coming back. Are we trapped? Are we controlled? No, it's just there's a process always. There's a process going on that we can't see. And when it happens, we can always see it in hindsight.
Mm.
We're all experts on World War II and we're all experts on World War One, but are we going to
Mhm.
be experts in World War Three?
Yeah. It's so funny that you mentioned World War III. I watched this movie yesterday, and it was like the world was pretty much destroyed from radiation from World War III. And I was just thinking, it just kind of hit me that it just doesn't take, it's not going to take very much for everybody to start launching nukes, but the planet's just going to be finished.
I personally don't think that will happen.
I don't think so either. But
Only because there's this innate sense of survival. I mean, I think they call it MAD, mutually assured destruction.
right.
Um, plus, I know there's extraterrestrial sources. I mean, we've discussed this before,
Hmm.
and intelligence agencies know they exist. You know, they've got craft. I believe strongly they've got craft because I've personally been in one.
Hmm.
I can't
Really?
prove it.
When
So,
can you tell us
when we,
about that?
yeah, well, yes and no. I mean, it's like, again, just because I've had an NDE and I've gone to the periphery of my consciousness doesn't mean to say I can still remember things. I still get veiled with things.
Mm.
And the extraterrestrial dimension to all of this is really, really complex. And they seem, I've seen so many arguments pro and for and against about why they're here, their purpose, and people are adamant. But again, they're subjective realities. And I've been in a craft twice.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't an abduction. I don't think it was an abduction because nothing happened to me harmful. I think I discussed once in my book where I was in a craft and there was this low ovoid table. It's kind of similar to the flat earth you got behind you as the backdrop.
Mm-hmm.
And it was down around my mid thigh region. So it was quite low. And I observed that it was quite low. That was quite, for me, that was a bit odd because I would like to table a little bit higher. So it wasn't designed for me or a human. Does that make sense? Or didn't seem to. And it was levitating, it was floating, it was just there, it was alive. And
Mm-hmm.
on this ovoid table, it was glowing very low in a very dark illuminated space. And I knew I was in a space, and I knew it was because I could smell it, I could feel it. It felt different. It wasn't a dream. It was like I was like, what is this? And I was just thinking about this. and I was looking around and it was dark. So I wasn't restricted, but I felt I was being restricted, if that makes sense, without being restricted. So I had minimal movement. And as I watched this table, I could see the whole world map and it was moving. It was like it was alive. I thought, wow, this is really amazing. And then another human appeared, another man. It was a man, male. And I just instantly telepathically said, it's really, I said something along the lines of, it's really weird. It's really weird. Like, what are we doing here? Or something, something along the lines of that. I've got it written down. And he said, yes. And he agreed with me. But we never actually spoke like, hey, what is this? I tried to look around. I knew I was being watched, but I couldn't see it, right? And so after I'd observed the table, no, that's right. I said, it's really lonely up here, isn't it? That's what I said to him. It's really lonely up here. And he went, yes, it is. So obviously we'd met before, but I didn't recognize him. And then all of a sudden, poof, I wake up in the morning and I close my eyes like, you do, you get up in the morning, you wake up, and then I close my eyes again and I could see the craft leaving. I thought, shit, I've been in a craft, wow. I just knew it straight away and I was tired. I was exhausted. So obviously I'd been up there, who knows, an hour, two, I have no idea. But when I wake up tired, I know that, I've been awake and I haven't had a proper sleep. So that was one time. Another time I've had multiple contacts, but again, a lot of people, you get all these fundamentalist nuts saying they're demons. Well, what are demons meant to do? Demons are meant to influence you into a negative format. And I know I'm not a negative person. I don't harm anyone. I don't harm anything. So define what a demon attribute is, or why a demon would even put up this facade of taking you into a spacecraft and try to, inject some sort of an hallucination into my mind. It's like, no, it is what it is. I don't try to label it. It just is what it is. For what purpose? Maybe that table, that global table, is going to manifest later and unzip in the form of visions of things that happen on the world. I think it was like a future table. It was like something I'd looked at and seen the future, but I can't remember some of those things. Right? So no idea why. Other people I know have been in craft. Amazing stories, better than mine.
What I find interesting lately is that some of the more progressive UFO people are saying that aliens are traveling interdimensionally. There are all these, they're kind of not really calling them aliens, but calling them non-human intelligences.
Yes.
And they're saying that when you're on your NDE, you could be meeting angels, religious figures, or ETs. And they're kind of almost saying they're all non-human intelligences. And then one of the podcasts I just posted was a woman that during her NDE, or one of her NDEs, she was, I think, in a cloud with God or something. And then she thought she was going back after me talking to God. I'm just kind of paraphrasing. And all of a sudden, instead of going straight to her body, she went straight to a UFO.
Yeah, that's odd. Yeah.
And she was saying that I was never into this UFO stuff. I'm not into it. I'm not interested in this. I went there. She was telling me what the ship looks like, describing the ship. And then all of a sudden the alien told her, you need to go. And then boom, she popped back into her body.
Exactly. And the thing is, like, Jung used to posit the theory that it was an archetypal, that it was somehow part of our archetype, because of the 1930s injection of films and all of this sort of thing. But then you had researchers like Bud Hopkins, rest in peace. I went and saw his presentation way back, just around the time I had my NDE, and I felt I was guided there. And I can't remember, was it the Hyatt Kingsgate in King's Cross, Sydney? And I got to speak with one of the keynote speakers. He sat in front of me, Paladin Jenkins. And he's quite ill at the moment. But I thought, well, 2,000 people at this thing, and here he sits right in front of me and has a cigarette. And I said, Paladin, and I quickly kicked off. I said, I don't want to bother you because, you're probably going to get pounded with people approaching you. And I kicked off a conversation, which was pertinent, and he was listening. So, because Paladin also had a very powerful experience, I think, in a Tibetan monastery, and he had a full transformation. excuse me, and then after that, he was promoting a book. So, and he's had powerful experiences with crop circles. I've had powerful experiences with crop circles. Never got to go there, but didn't need to. I got a good friend here, John Lusk, who lives in my village. He's a professor of geology. He's no idiot. The guy's got a doctorate after his name. He sent me photos of a triangle on his upper thigh, like a tattoo, after he'd been into a physical crop circle. And that tattoo remained for 6 weeks and then faded. And so I was meant to meet him. I got photos of this. I said, I'm not laughing. I know this is true because I've had experiences too. So obviously we're being guided by, this is where it starts to get tricky, because extraterrestrials, are they under the same cosmic laws that we are in terms of cosmology and ontology? Is there an expansive deity that pervades the whole universe? Because I know there's entities out there. I was told that during my NDE, that entities existed right throughout the universe. So why are we going, look, I asked the question, it's a rhetorical question, are we going through an evolutionary phase? I feel yes, where some of us are being planted with thought forms as we start to expand and accept that we might not be alone. And so that's planted into my consciousness whilst I'm incarnate. When I die, that thought form will be embedded into my next incarnation as an expansionary, evolutionary aspect of the next phase of our growth. We are apes running around shooting each other with little bits of lead and toxic poisons, looking for territorial dominance. So we have 5 different species, main subgroup species in the Homo sapiens. You've got Asians, yellow, red, black, white, and whatever. We can't even cope with an Asian or a black or a yellow or a white or a brown. How are we going to cope when we get out there with millions of extraterrestrials in big school? So we've got to transcend this ape-like territorial dominance over each other. Groups, subgroups, secret societies, money, all of these. This is very basic, dense reality. So there's only, so we're going to be tested. We have to be tested. All species, when you grow, you have to be tested. And so in the religious sense, in the religious testing, there's a purification time. All religions talk about it. It's starting. And this is when, it doesn't matter whether you're Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, Jewish, Native American, Australian, Indigenous, Aboriginal, Jainism, African, voodoo, witch doctor, witch, shaman, whatever, everyone is going to be tested. We have to be tested to push us through this envelope so that we're, all of our impurities are burnt away until we don't know what the hell's going on. And we just accept that we don't know the mystery. We don't know how big this reality is. I got a glimpse of it, yes. Am I special? No, definitely not. In fact, I find it very difficult to deliver some of these concepts because people, they're not even asking the questions, Jeff. They're not even asking the right questions. They're still forcing narrative onto us. I'm saying, no, I think you should really listen to NDEs. I get a bit facetious sometimes, I must admit. Someone says they saw Jesus. Mm-hmm. And I say, well, did you ask him when he's coming back? Because the Bible says he's coming back. Why didn't you ask him that simple question? And of course, people go, oh, how dare you? I said, no, but it's in biblical theology that Christ is coming back. Mm-hmm. It says it. So I'm not being rude. I'm just asking pertinent questions.
Would you consider your NDE as a religious experience?
No, definitely not. But I did study religion afterwards. And I can paraphrase religious dogma into a spiritual framework, hopefully, so that people can, everyone's experience is important. If they see Jesus, fantastic. I didn't, but I know who he was. I know what he was and what he is in context of a greater picture. I believe that that it was a title. Jesus was a title, not a person. And if someone attained that particular attainment, of enlightenment, they were called a Jesus. Back in Africa, you were called an Inusaset, and it was associated with the merging of Osiris, Isis archetypes. And when you died to those archetypes through Gnostic experiences or Gnostic deaths, OBE, aka NDE, OBE, then you got a title. So Melchizedek, you can read in the book of Genesis, Melchizedek brings out bread and wine, exactly the same symbolic attributes that Jesus brings out at the Last Supper, bread and wine. So it's not attributed just to one person. So there's these overlaps. You say, okay, well, who were the Melchizedek priesthood? Because it's a priesthood, right? And the Catholic Church is guilty. I'm sorry, I'll say it to the Pope's face. You've tampered with the Bible, Pope. Fix it up. Get the old texts back. Fix it up. Because what they did is they placed 3 words in the book of Hebrews, I think it is, somewhere around there. But they placed 3 words which caused a massive schism in Christianity. And those 3 words were one and only. They were the 3 words they took out. One and only Son of God, yet the reference to sons of God, plural. This has been picked up by other philosophers. I'm not the first one that said this. So who were these enigmatic sons of God? Sons of God, plural, as opposed to Son of God. So by making him a singular Son of God, they trapped Christianity into a Tupperware system, a pyramid Tupperware system, where the Vatican then became the intercessionary priesthood, and that was exactly against what Jesus taught. That's what this is why there was a thing called the Filioque, and the Filioque was a split between Orthodox Christianity, Eastern Orthodox Christianity, and Roman Catholicism, and they have not fixed for 1,000 years. This happened over 1,600 years ago. And so they said, well, it stuffs up Pentecost when Holy Spirit comes down on everyone. Everyone. Holy Spirit directly comes down and hits everyone. And I'd say NDE is a part of that Gnostic experience, yes. So it's no priest was involved. This was Holy Spirit hitting everyone. And so this stuffs up the Vatican's tampering with the Bible by saying, you have to go through Jesus, and by extension, you have to go through us, and we'll tell you what a mystical experience is. No. I think you should listen to me, Pope John Paul II, or whomever's in power. You should start listening to us, because I will say one of my predictions, and I'll call it a prophecy, is the Vatican's going to be tested. It will be tested brutally, very shortly, in this purification, what they call the second death. There's a second death, which is mentioned in Revelation 3 times, as opposed to the first death. First death is involved in taking on the pathway of Christ consciousness. The second one, you don't want to be on the wrong side of spirit, because you'll be on your own. It's a purification. It's now chemical purification by fire, not external fire, internal fire. I mean, we're talking about a creator here of everything. It pervades the whole damned universe, and we're putting the universe into a tiny little chapter. No, it blasts every religion out of the book, because it is a force that is so vast. And all it needs to do is focus and power. As I said, if it lifts the energy up too fast, we couldn't cope with it. We would not cope with it. We would go mental. We'd go psychic, absolutely psycho, because the influx of thought forms, and that's pretty much what happened to me during my NDE. I got a small dose of it. And this is why I'm really disturbed. I'm worried for humanity, because they're going to be forced to go through an NDE. We're all going to go through a near-death experience here. We won't physically die, but our beliefs will die. Everything we've known will die. Our systems will die. It's happening as we speak. We've got total chaos and collapse happening around us, and we're the last vestiges of hanging on by our fingernails. We're trying to hang on to, no, we don't want this to change because we're comfortable. I've got news for you. It's out of our hands. It's going to happen. It will happen. It is happening. So we flow with it. Either go with the river or get smashed.
All right, we're running out of...
I say that in a nice way. I say that in a nice way, not in a vindictive way. I don't want anyone to be harmed, at all.
Right. Well, we are running out of time again. These podcasts just fly by. So before we go, I believe they can find your artwork at, is it johnscott.com?
johnscottartist.com. Yeah.
johnscottartist.com. And what is the title of your book again?
From memory, God's Mountain. I don't know why I called it that. It just
God's
sounded good,
Mount.
but
What? That's the
God's Mountain.
pyramid, wasn't that?
Well, I thought so, yeah. I thought it was the original mountain, and
Mhm.
I was shown the secret of it. But it's pointless. I mean, I've released the secret of it and what
Mhm.
its purpose was, but
Mhm.
contextually, a lot of people won't like me releasing this.
Mhm.
But I've purposely, because that's what I was shown to do, and there
Mhm.
was a much bigger picture because we were in a different consciousness space back then. I'm going back hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years. The pyramid is that old, and they've been hiding this. Someone's been hiding this, and so I put proof, and I show the proof of how old it is
Mhm.
with the height of the doorways and the water table.
Right.
I've spoken to scholars about. They don't want to talk to me. They don't want to go near me because it's like, who are you? Are you an expert? Are you an Egyptologist? You don't need to be. I spoke directly with deity. It told me.
Right.
Okay. I
Right.
trust it.
Right.
It showed me the clues, so I put the clues in the book. I'm just sharing. What else do you want me to do?
Right.
You know?
All right. So we've got your website. We've got your book. You are on Facebook, and we know that you interact in the near-death experience groups or group. I'm not sure if you do more than one, but
I'd only do that main one. Ned
the
Matinia and Katie Louise are the two moderators there. They do a great job.
what is that one called? It's got a lot of people, like over 50,000 people in the group, I believe.
Look, from memory, I don't know off the top. I can't remember. I think it's just near death experience. It's not
Mm,
hard to find. So it's an open public forum.
right. And they're kind enough
Um,
to let me post my podcast there.
no, I think it's excellent. And as I said, the moderators do a fantastic job. And it's kind of like a bubble. You don't have all of these people getting rude, and it gets sorted out pretty
Mm,
quickly. It's a nice safe spot if people want to share their
mm,
experience.
mm,
They're also associated with IANDS,
mm,
International Association for Near Death Studies.
mm,
I think that's an admirable cause. I
mm,
really do. I think that this has got to come out. People have got to learn more about this paranormal experience,
mm.
but more so the cosmology that, there is a greater force out there looking out for us.
Are you open and receptive if people message you on Facebook?
Oh, to a point, yeah. I mean, I still have to paint. I've still got to put food in my mouth. It's like I still struggle. I'm a struggling artist, mate. I'm not rich by any means, but
Uh,
I don't talk to. Some get an intuitive feeling that it's not right. Some I
mhm.
do talk to. Yeah.
Okay.
People who are actually reaching out.
Right.
Everyone suffers, Jeff. There's a lot
Yeah.
of suffering out there, a lot of
Right.
post trauma
Right.
with NDEs. I didn't realize it was so bad until you actually talk to people about what they went. Some of people have horrific experiences, car smashes and surgery,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of infighting about the definition of a near-death experience. I don't get into that stuff. That's ego.
Mm-hmm.
I got, my heart stopped for 8 minutes and blah blah blah. It's like, yeah, but what did you come back with? You know, Kerry Packer, an Australian billionaire,
Mm-hmm.
he's since passed away. He also had a near-death experience, but he saw nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, wouldn't it have been great? But he put defibrillators, which the electronic heart pumps, and he made sure they're in every ambulance in the country. So he actually, because he had a heart attack. So look at the good that came out of it, even though he
Yeah.
didn't come back with any esoteric, super duper stories.
Right.
He realized that these could save people. Hats off to him.
Mm-hmm.
Some people liked him, some didn't. I think, well, the guy left a legacy.
Yeah.
He left a brilliant legacy, and he didn't see anything, but he had a near-death experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's what you come back with and what you do is the most important. How you use that power effectively to help others, because everything's impermanent, Jeff. We're all going to die. Every single one of us is going to die. We can't get out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we wrap it up here, do you have one last message of hope to share with the audience?
Trust your gut. It's not the end. It's a difficult phase. We're going through a very difficult transition. There's a lot of people playing with power. I feel sorry for them because they will get caught. Everything will be exposed. And everything we do is recorded. Absolutely everything. You cannot escape actions. It's impossible.
Hmm.
Heaven and hell are both down here. This is something I would have liked to have discussed on a metaphysical level. Heaven is available here on the planet, but we have to create that heaven. It's not going to come without hard work. And when I say work, it's not about forcing a belief onto something. It has to come through open communication, compassion, sharing without blasting everyone with our religion or our belief. It's about being open that other people have different beliefs. I think that's admirable. I mean, you put witches on and you don't judge anyone. You put religious people on, you put Gnostics, you put anti-experiences, and I've never seen you once judge them. That we need more of that. And that's why I like you as a host, because you listen to everyone in the same equanimity that you give to each and every person, yet others would judge. I see it all the time. Try to not judge. Try to, if you see someone doing the wrong thing and they're your friend, try to just say, look, this is good advice for you. Even if it's sometimes hard advice. It's like being like a child. A child does something wrong. A bit of tough love sometimes goes, the right, a long way. Not too much, but I don't know. I don't have any answers, mate. I tell you, I don't have any solid answers. Just love everyone. Try your best. You're going to make mistakes. Yeah, I still make them. And can't hide forever, but you have to still interact with society, just little steps to transmute it into a better place. Because the ones that are making it a dark place, I don't know, I feel sorry for them. There's something going on in their psyche that they need this kind of power so much. I don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the power is only temporary. Everything can get taken away from us when the timing's right. Yeah.
All right, John. Well, thanks for that. And thank you again for being my guest. I appreciate you. And I wish you massive success in everything that you do. And I want to see you I want to see you change from being a struggling artist to a super successful artist.
Thanks, mate. That'd be nice. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm just having a look at that flat earth behind you. Nice, mate. That's really nice. I could go skating on that in winter.
By the way, for those of you, we're talking about this because we've been joking about the flat earth. When I first met John on the very first podcast, he said, "Oh, you should make that earth into a flat earth." So he made this for me. He flattened out the planet, and here we are.
Yeah, well, there's a story behind that, isn't there?
I guess I got to get a flat earther as a guest. That would be great.
Well, you should interview Alex Proyas. Why don't you interview the director Alex Proyas of the film Dark City? It's like a kind of like a gothic dark sci-fi that came around the time of The Matrix.
Okay.
I'm friends with Alex on Instagram. I should give him a heads up, and he can do an interview with you.
Yeah.
Because in his film The Dark City, it's a flat Earth with a city, but it's an extraterrestrial craft.
Oh wow.
Right. Yeah, it's a great sort of like underground cult film. I've watched it quite a few times. Alex Proyas. He's you can look him up. He's not. I think he lives in Victoria, from memory.
What's the name of his film again?
Oh, he did iRobot, Dark City was another
iRobot.
one.
I think I've seen iRobot. Which one was iRobot?
Oh, that was the one. What's that African American actor? And it was quite a modern one with all the robots in it. And
is that Will Smith?
Yeah, Will Smith. Yeah, that's
okay.
He was one of the,
oh
yep,
wow,
yep,
well, that's interesting.
Yeah, Alex did that film. He did Gods of Egypt. That was another one that didn't do so well, but he knows. But no, he seems but it was just the whole concept of Dark City, and the disc was actually an extraterrestrial vehicle traveling through space, and there was these psychic, bald-headed, dark-dressed entities that were controlling and changing time and changing reality. And I thought, that's great. I mean, this is really kind of I don't know where he got the script from, but I'll tell you what, it's pretty accurate to some aspects of what's going on in these dark realms of consciousness, you know? Yeah. It's a great film. If you get a chance to watch it, it's good. Maybe even get Alex to talk about it. I think it's a great film.
That would be cool. You know, what's interesting is I've had a couple Hollywood directors on, and I recently saw on the internet that George Lucas had an NDE.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. So, I mean, it's a long shot, but I have reached out to him and see if I can get him on the podcast.
Look, do it because I had,
Mhm.
visually, some of the stuff I saw, I would like to actually paint it one day when I've got the time
Mhm.
to actually paint some of the stuff I saw in the process of going through my NDE, because light is just light. It would just be a big blank canvas. How do you impregnate the emotional and psychic content? You can't. But
Mhm.
I can definitely, some of the substructural crystalline gateways and hubs that I saw in my phase going through the quantum world, the celestial world, were bloody phenomenal. It's like, I mean, I can't even describe it orally, but I can do it visually, and that's still yet to come. I feel those paintings are hovering above me, and I'll enter
Mhm.
into them as I expand in my journey as I get older.
Mhm.
But man, I'd love to get hold of, say, Lucas or someone like that. I mean, I know a lovely guy called George Liddell. He's a good friend of mine. He's a set designer. He's working on a film in Sydney at the moment.
Mhm.
And George and I, we get together regularly. And George is he's an artist, lovely Scottish man. Um, we talk about this stuff, and I said, man, if I could just get the opportunity to storyboard this out and get some direction. I think one of my favorite directors at the moment is who's the guy doing Dune? He's doing the modern Dune that got held back for a year. What's his name?
Yeah, I don't know.
Uh,
I'm
the
curious to.
French Canadian director.
I'm very curious to see that because I really like the books and I've
Yeah,
seen a
same.
couple Frank Herbert,
Yep,
and I've seen the original Dune movie, and then they kind of did
yep,
like a thing on Sci-Fi or two or three
yeah. I think Ridley
episode
Scott
ones.
did the first one. Yeah, Ridley Scott did the first version.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was him or something. I think it's somebody else,
Okay.
but it
Well, he
doesn't
did
really
Blade Runner.
matter.
Ridley Scott
Yeah,
did Blade Runner.
right,
Yeah, but
right.
no, that Dune was the concept, was messianic concept of giant worms and stuff. And I mean, I was painting this, I was drawing these worms when I was a kid, and then this film popped up. So it's like, wow, wow, worms. This is right up my alley,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm.
So sci-fi is really moving into consciousness itself. I think Tenet was another film. I mean, he did. Who was the guy that did Tenet, the recent release? Didn't do too well at the box office, but he's done quite a few films where, well, things like Interstellar's another one,
Yeah, that was a good
with
movie.
Matthew McConaughey, great
Yeah,
film, where they
yeah.
talk about dimensions, and the Tesseract was brilliant. I mean, I could discuss this with anybody and talk about it because I thought it's a great concept, because you can't shove 5 dimensions and express it in a 3-dimensional or 2-dimensional format. It's very difficult. So the Tesseract actually formulated a time space bubble where he could access it through the library. I thought that was brilliant. That's
Hmm.
kind of like the Akashic record that would be equivalent to the astral plane.
Right.
I mean, brilliant stuff. So metaphysics does overlap with a lot of this stuff, and sci-fi has always been about projecting future potential.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know,
Mm-hmm.
which is for me, I get very excited about this stuff. We're getting some interesting films coming out.
Yeah.
Some of them are rehashed, but I'd like to see some new concepts breaking through
Mm-hmm.
in terms of NDEs. And I mean, it's very difficult to portray this stuff visually,
Mm-hmm.
very difficult, because each and every one of them are kind of like, romanticized. But getting them into pure sacred geometry, as I said, I saw that the whole universe was a liquid crystal. That was one of the first things I picked up when I got into that realm. And
Mm-hmm.
that this liquid crystal has step down densities. And this is why I talk about this in my book about the step down process. You've got asymmetrical crystals and you've got symmetrical crystals. You've got, periodic and aperiodic structures, but they all work in symmetry and that flow down into density. It's a very complex dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like far out. This is all the stuff that came to me afterwards. It's exciting. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
But visually placing it into a visual format, very difficult,
Yeah.
very difficult,
Yes, it
very
is.
difficult. Even as an artist, I find it difficult to portray. I
Right.
could do it, but it takes time and money. I don't have the luxury of that,
Right. And
you know.
speaking of time, I am way over time
Ding, ding,
and I have to run.
ding, ding.
So thanks again, brother. I hope to see you soon. And
Thank
I
you,
wish
Jeff.
you the best and have a great day
Yeah.
over there.
I'll get in touch with Alex and I'll send him an email or something and say, hey, get onto JeffMara and see if he can't get talking. Talk to some of these Hollywood directors, open them up, to at least listen to the stories, you
Hmm.
know.
That'd be
Be
great.
great.
That'd be
Yeah,
great.
I
Thank you.
agree. It's got to work in a symbiotic relationship. They can't just steal the story. It's good that they approach us and get into the nitty-gritty. That
Right.
way you can expand on areas that, that personal stuff that you mentioned that we can't really talk about.
Right.
I can infer it through the visual, possibly. I'm not saying I can do it as a promise, but I can infer and hint and say, look, try that, go there and see what happens. And it's all about the visceral hook, because we're all the same. Ultimately, we all have this sameness at an essential core.
Mm-hmm.
And so we recognize it. That's why we have recognition of genuine NDEs as opposed to a fabricated NDE. We've all got the potential to have these experiences. Why steal them? It's just, just be yourself.
Yeah.
They will come. If you're authentic, they will come.
Right.
Not always, but often.
Right.
I'm still asking the questions. Why me? I don't know. I don't know, Jeff.
Yeah.
I really don't know.
Yeah, it's true.
Anyway, thanks for having me on.
All right. Take care and have a great day. And I really appreciate you.
And thanks to all the listeners out there. I appreciate it. Yep.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Thanks,
Ciao.
Jeff.
Mm-hmm. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.